Hi, Siphokazi, Margie, and Lee. We are all so excited to be here with all of you today. Thank you for making the time, but most especially, thank you so much for all of your incredible work. Okay, I have a small confession. I love Open Book Festival, and I try to make sure that I'm around each year so that I can participate in whatever way I can. So this year, when I was approached with these particular writers and their books, I jumped at the opportunity. I was so thrilled. Then I got the theme of the panel, and I read it, and it said, Stories to Save Lives. Buhle Ngaba speaking to 3 incredible authors on writing mental health. And I immediately got anxious, and I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I went into a spiral for a few days, and then I finally realized that the reason that the prospect of doing this made me anxious was because we're in 2024, yet somehow I still find the language, the words, the communication, the conversations around mental health to be so limiting. Then I picked up the books and I started to read them, and what I absolutely loved was that I could breathe, could sigh in relief, because I realized that it wasn't my job to come up with the words, that what made all of this work so incredible is that these writers did. And so that's what we're here to find out about today, how they ended up finding the words. Okay, I must warn all of you, I'm very keen on all of these books. As you can see, these are my copies, so we have a lot of tabs. So we're probably not going to get through half of the things that I have written, but I'm definitely going to try. And I'm going to make sure that I leave at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end for any questions. So if you see me running out of time, don't be afraid to stop me. Now, I don't want to do too much questioning. I'd much rather get into the work. So I'm going to stop us at intervals so that the authors can share some of it with us. Is that all good with you guys? Wonderful. Okay. So in the opening of Margie's book, she shares an incredible quote, and it says, "To unravel the torment, you must begin somewhere." So I think I'd like to start off by asking Margie to let us begin somewhere with her book. If she could read for us, please. Yes, please.
Thank you, Buhle, and thank you, Lesedi and Siphokazi, and everyone for coming. It's my favorite festival, this one, and the Homecoming Centre is well named because it does feel like being at home, which, as Lesedi and I were talking about, is a rare feeling for those of us who have active brains, let's put it that way. So I'm going to read you the very opening from Love and Fury, and thanks for reading that fantastic Louise Bourgeois quote, who's actually a visual artist. And maybe we can talk later about visual artists and writing and how they work together. The flat at the top of a Dickensian house I moved into in the autumn of 2018 had 2 pokey bedrooms, one for me. A rotation of daughters would share the other. But the living room had a panoramic view of Hampstead Heath, the only wild place left in London. Other writers had stayed there before me, my elderly landlords told me when I went to lunch with them. Famous writers who wrote famous books. At the very table they had decked with a bowl of olives, a salad, and a basket of stale bread. You'll be happy here, they said, gesturing towards the serene heath where the leaves were turning russet and gold. I agreed. I looked forward to settling, to making their home mine, to finishing a book at their table. It was arranged. Money was exchanged for keys to the 8th place I'd lived in during the 3 vagrant years since I'd packed the clothes I could fit into a large red suitcase and fled Cape Town in 2015. The next day, I dragged that case up 4 flights of narrow stairs and put it next to my books and bin bags stuffed with bedding. I set about scouring a decade of other people's grime from carpets, windows, and walls. I washed the crockery, cutlery, pots, and pans crammed into the kitchen cupboards. I scrubbed floors, stripped walls of the landlord's looming pictures, and packed away their ornaments, and winnowed the furniture down to the bare minimum. Rearranged plants, books, cushions, furniture, and I hung the 3 small oil paintings I'd brought from South Africa, a landscape with aloes in vivid red bloom, a portrait of my Granny Margaret as a cherubic baby, and one of me as a fat-cheeked toddler in blue dungarees. Those paintings had hung in all 12 houses I'd lived in as a child, and they made yet another place that wasn't mine home. I threw out the bills and the takeaway menus, jamming the drawer to the dining table to make space for the papers one needs to prove to the authorities that one is who one says one is. My passports, my daughter's too, our birth certificates, my divorce papers, tax records. A photograph fell out. London, 1988, scrawled on the back. I picked it up and turned it over, and there we were, me and my ex-husband, my children's father, in a photo booth. I'm wearing a neon pink scarf and black and silver starburst earrings that always got tangled in my hair. I looked straight at the camera, and at myself 30 years later, by the remembered sensation of Aidan nuzzling my ear. His eyes, laughter in them, are also turned towards the camera. Seeing us looking at me gave me vertigo. It had been taken the year before we married, and I was 24 then, too young to know a wedding is as much a beginning as it is an ending, that marriage is the institution in which generation after generation women are forged, that it is both sanctuary and prison, that success can look like failure and failure like success, that marriage can be a place where loneliness hides in plain sight. I shoved that picture containing our optimism and naivety to the back of the drawer. That first night in my new bed with its freshly laundered sheets, I could not sleep. When the blackbirds called the dawn, I got up, made coffee, and looked out at the heath. The clouds were pink and the sky orange above a slender spire surrounded by tall trees. My first wedding in the hot June of 1989 took place under one of those trees, on one of those lawns. Had that been my first step in the direction leading to where I was now, looking for a way to disappear? For months, I'd been trying to write a suicide note, but my writing, which I regard as separate from me, something life and death-giving, beneficent and tyrannical as the Furies, those ancient goddesses of life, death, and vengeance, vetoed me. Now I see their tactics, the Furies and the writings, but then I could not. So it bewildered me when I sat down to draft my farewell note, calm, because I was doing something, that questions of form would swirl. What would it say? What reasons does one give? What reasons does one need to put a stop to things? This thing that is oneself, myself. I wished to set her or me free, to turn to air, to escape. But I could not find the right words. Writing was the one thing I knew how to do, but when I needed it most, it abandoned me. It made me desperate and mad. Shall I read the last bit? Or shall I stop?
Please do, because this is when.
Dearest, I feel certain that I am going mad again. Virginia Woolf wrote in the suicide note addressed to her husband, I did not hear voices like she did. I heard a muffled silence, and I felt my lack of ballast. I tried copying hers, but I had no dearest to address. Must one stay alive simply because there is no one to write to? There was a void, and I was falling. But try as I might, try as I did over and over, I could not write my own note, and it seemed unethical to plagiarize someone else's death. So I cast about for a way to leave life in a manner that would not disturb anyone, as a mother tiptoes away from a sleeping baby. But babies wake and cry for the mother's return. I knew because I have had 3, all grown and nest flown now, but still my babies. I considered giving my life away, donating it as if it were a spare organ, a kidney, say. But what, and here the doubt crept in, would I be donating? This worried me. Would the recipient be able to make something of the extra time, my time, or would they become as mad as I have been? To know, I would have to better understand this tenacious life of mine. I would have to go out into the world again and look for what I had not been able to see before. It was a raw November day, and in the grip of this lucid insanity, I put on my coat and gloves, spiraled down the stairs, and stepped into the street. 100 places ahead was a path onto the heath. I took it and plunged into the trees, searching for the place where we had eaten our optimistic wedding feast. looking for the grassy slope where we'd sipped champagne under a gnarled oak. But the trees had grown or died back, and I could not find the place. I could not find myself either. The rain started scudding over the muddy ground, driving me away. Once inside, I retrieved my pen and notebooks, tearing out pages of To Whom It May Concern death notes. I have had to be quiet and patient long enough for the shy night creatures of the mind to slip out of their shadows so I could befriend them. This book kept me alive. I will give it that.
What a line, right? Thank you, Margie. Thank you, Margie. So for me, as soon as I read that introduction and when I got to this book kept me alive, I will give it that. I was like, I'm reading the rest. It's happening. Similarly with you, Lee, that's also how I felt in how honest your book is. By the time we got to page 4, straight up, I'm not suicidal, not really. My mother can't afford. Then we got to page 5, and this one I loved because it's so simple. I think it's your friend asking you how you're feeling. Simple response, and you said, I feel fucked. And I loved that because I was like, that is what it feels like when everything is so still, terrible, itchy, kind of what Margie also described.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Could you read a little bit for us?
Yeah,
Thank you.
very happy to. It's also my first book fest, by the way.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Thank you all for being here, man. Like, it's pretty special. Can't really see faces right now because of the lights.
They're definitely there.
Yeah, you can feel them. You can hear them too. But yeah, so what I'm about to read, it's quite late in the book, so I don't know if that counts as a spoiler. But I just had a session with my therapist about my parents. So my parents had come through, and we just kind of debriefed on both sessions. And it was visiting hours, and we were kind of like this, group of friends at the clinic, kind of trauma bonded firmly. And we often count on each other. There was this courtyard in the place, and that's really where so much of, I think, the sharing happened. And so we were there. We were in the courtyard. The early evening moon casts a light on the treetops. I'm sitting with Emily, Refilwe, and Nadia, watching visitors come and go. Isn't it funny? I ask. What? These people, visitors? Yeah. How are they trying? How's that funny? They have no idea what they're doing, but they just want to help. Emily chuckles dryly. Look, clueless, all of them. Asking themselves dead-end questions about how to do this right. Finding no answers and doing it still. They're fucking trying, and it's the most beautiful thing. It's perfect. Most of them have no idea what mental illness even is. See that guy waiting anxiously for a patient over there? He probably thinks Anxiety is a song by the Black Eyed Peas. Or a heavy metal track. A cliche, but he brought pizza and hopes it helps anyway. Some of these people are afraid. They don't know if the person they came to visit will stop drinking and killing themselves, but here they are, still tiptoeing on ice and hoping it breaks all at once. Saying the wrong things, but showing up. This is all anyone could ask for from the people that love them, asking you questions and food. Yeah, she sighs quietly. My mom brought me couscous because I liked it when I was like 5. And I reply, mine doesn't know I prefer chicken licken these days. She still brings me KFC. Why haven't you told her? Because I know she's doing the best she can with what she knows. Zuri sends a string of text messages. Hate the things she does, I say, but fuck, I love her so much. I know, I see the way you look at her, Nadia says. Oh yeah? Yeah, when you introduced us to your mom, you showed her off like the most perfect thing in the world. You're a little mama's boy, Lee. I am. She is. You didn't break up with her, did you? Nope. I knew it, she says with accusing laughter. You're weird, Lee. I am? Yeah, but I like it. And so one of the texts said, you're the most giving person I've come to know. So you fought? We fought, obviously. And then we made plans to go to the Eastern Cape. Talking to my sister helped a lot because she's got to connect for cheap flights. Nadia asked, interrupting me. Well, I just kind of realized that she's been trying to get through to me in the same way I've been trying to get through to my mom, You're a sucker for punishment, Lee. Get yourself people that love you. I'm still learning how to be alive, Nadia. I'm still learning how to put the fun in dysfunction. We'll get there. A girl with a father wound, a dude with a mom wound, reflecting back to each other how you feel about yourselves. Yeah, one day at a time. Refula then says, I struggled today. I was like, what, with the electives? She's like, yeah. How do you figure out how to give a coherent fucking voice to the noise? You respect it. You pay attention to it and listen like music. You have to heal yourself you have to heal yourself because you're always responsible for yourself. Once you've processed the noise, you might feel lighter and less preoccupied over time. And it will feel strange to feel good. Don't worry, that's part of it. It's the lightness of being you've always deserved. So don't mistake the inner peace that will find its way to you for boredom. Busyness is not your identity. Neither is the panic. Don't confuse the lack of noise for a lack of identity. They are not the same. Did I also say it like that when I gave you advice? Nah, mine sounds better. It's poetic as fuck. I'm alone now, sitting in the spot I fell into the day I arrived. That warm afternoon when Kevin invited me into a collective madness, before I gained a strange education. A single aluminium seat is still waiting for me in the corner. The city skyline still obstructs the sky. The shrubbery still marks the buildings hidden behind it. With earphones firmly pressed against my head, I can still hear the soft edge of conversation surrounding me over the strum of Gautier's guitar on Bronte. A new set of faces has come in, but the deliberations over cigarette logistics continue. And the first question anyone asks is still, so what are you in for? Yeah, it sounds like jail, right? Some will stay for 10 days and others will go the full 21 days. They will have all sorts of names and they will have all sorts of stories. And they will have nothing in common except the fact that they are all fallible, hopeful, terrified, and vulnerable to the noise. They will be human. What a mad thing to be, human. Thank you.
Okay, then finally, Siphokazi, I would like to ask you to please read page 23, 1 star from a house plant. Yeah, all of you are starting to relate already.
Thank you. 1 star from a houseplant. Insufficient sunlight. Too much watering. Would give 0 stars if I could. Host pendulums between caution and neglect. Overheard saying, peace lilies are difficult to raise. Grateful she chose nothing to root itself in her uterus for her to nurture. Host requires compassion to decipher drooping thirst and slow brown death of leaves. 5 stars to the dinner guest who recognized aching roots and said, you need a bigger pot. Left us both sprouting towards the ceiling in relief.
Thank you.
I just have to say, poets always win.
In half the time.
It's like not even a competition.
Quarter of the time.
I don't know. I was going to say, it's going really well when throughout the readings, the audience is going, and they did. Okay, so I feel like all of these books, to me anyway, felt very much like a reflective outpouring. But now we're here, now we're here, they are actual books. So the outpouring in a very particular form anyway has stopped. So I suppose my question is, now that the books are actually here, can you reflect on the processes of writing them and also your own mental health journey?
Who do?
Damn,
Casual.
you're gonna start off so with light banter. Huh?
No? Very chilled.
Do you want the festival version to start?
You know what? Please, lead the way.
All right, so this is my debut collection, so I'll start.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, you figure out
Yeah, we'll next. Yeah.
Yes, so it's strange to have a book as a tangible sort of mark in time, like a
Yes,
planting of a
Siphokazi, because
flag.
we've been watching you and loving you for so long. We're all so thrilled. Yeah.
To those who don't yet love me and aren't thrilled yet, the reason that's the case is because I'm a performing artist, so I've had the opportunity to have a quite extensive career as a playwright, a spoken word poet, a filmmaker. And so this is my first book that has a sort of cumulative effect of some of the things I have been engaging with for years. But this made me cry the most. I have never really sat with myself this much. in so much silence, with so much anxiety, because it's also a lot slower as opposed to some of the, live performance, for example. So this slow, deep, reflective process where you are also grappling between the things you want to say to yourself and the idea of them being read by someone else. Because what does it mean to put my, if I'm feeling anxious or whatever, putting that on the page and then making it available for reflection, for critique. That's scary. And so I had to remember there's a question that my editor, Uvangile Ganjo, asked me that I had a breakdown. So she sent the feedback, and I read like the first question, and then I texted her, I was like, so I need to have a quick breakdown. I'm going to get back to you about, like, I'm not even reading any further in the feedback. Just this line has already unraveled my entire being. When she said, who do you write for? I'm just like, in the middle of the manuscript, who do you write for? Like, what do you mean? So I think the process of outpouring, I wish it was just this easy flood of like, oh, these are my feelings. It was a struggle. It was a knuckle dragged out fight sometimes in saying, is this too far? Is this too honest? Is this too authentic? It's like, is this processed enough for me to feel like I can work it into text? Or do I just need to go to a therapist? You know what I mean? Like, should I write a book or should I go to a therapist? Because, so I realized after I wrote the book, okay, I still need the therapy. There's no way around it.
Yes.
There's no way around it. So it was, there were moments, but there was certainly a sort of stuttering of trying to figure out how to articulate feeling, how to articulate thought, but also fragmentation. I think that was probably the biggest thing of being comfortable with fragmentation, to say, there are more questions than answers, and a lot of release as well. So you can ask me this question in 6 months. Again, we can reflect on it. Again, when it's like, I actually don't know what I was doing. But
thank you.
Yeah, so I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to have this conversation in this format, because it's now something I can return to. I think there's something about being able to return to reflection, which I didn't have as a performing artist. Because you perform and then people are like, yay, and then we all leave. But now it's literally saying page 23, and I'm like, okay, when I wrote this maybe 6 months ago, this is where I am now. So this ability to return to that version of the self through the multiple selves that you go through in your becoming.
Yeah, that's going to be my next question, actually, around fragmentation and multiple selves. Margie?
That's really interesting, talking what I was hearing you saying about the interaction, and then the writing and the sort of isolation. And in one of my journeys, and when I use the word mad, I'm not meaning that derogatively. One of the things I found with language is that the word mental health, it makes me the word health I think of star jumps and washing your hands and stuff like that. You know what I mean? There's something profound about one's own mind and soul and psyche. It's a mixture of this not working. It's very, very frightening. And the most useful word for me is to say I felt mad. I felt unhomed in myself, is perhaps another way I could say it. I felt like I'm a citizen of two countries. All of you, the sane, you look extra sane, especially in the dark. And then the country that there are many of us where we feel this unhoming in the self for whatever reasons it comes about. So in the process of writing, I have written some books before, as some of you might know, but the process of writing a memoir and trying to do a kind of cartography of the self, like trying to find where I was and what had happened. And it's a bit like that Hansel and Gretel story where they leave the little crumbs and you go back, but the crumbs are gone. But for me, in the process, there are two things. There's the therapeutic outpouring and dealing with the unbelievable invasion. Lesedi talks about it, the noise in one's head, these voices telling you, they might not be hallucinations, but telling you are worthless and you must kill yourself and you must go away and stuff like that. So I knew already from many years of writing that writing you need to perfect the art of solitude, which is being in companionship with yourself. So the I and the me, you have in English pronouns, where those two are friends, where there's a Mobius strip between I and me. For me, when I go mad, I lose that, it breaks. The I attacks the me. I always think of the me as the somatic, more gentle, more intimate, physical part, and then this I, it's like this unbelievable, like a metronome chopping at you, like a psychopath. It's really, I'm sure many of you have had this feeling in various form. It's a very terrifying feeling. And we did talk about suicide, just to come back. My own experience of suicidal thoughts is the desire for absence and for that thing to stop. I think that's what many people who have those, it's you just want some peace. So in the writing process, but I do think differently of a book. So the books, and I could tell from what Lesedi was reading, a good memoir about being a mad person is where you don't chop your reader up. So the processing, this long process of solitude for me in the writing was to work out, well, how do I open up the house of myself to readers to enter? And I thought, okay, there the laws of hospitality apply. So we're not going to do a Macbeth. He invited the king and then killed everybody. Don't write a memoir like that. So you think you have to understand. I thought this was the rule for me as a writer, writing this thing, so that people who read the thing can come through this house, explore. They can go up to the attic, down to the basement. Scary there, but leave being transformed, but also nurtured and fed. Like you offer your guests some food and some rest, and off they go, perhaps transformed but safe. And to me, that's very important, the writing. So there are areas of my life where which I haven't put in there. They were the ones I realized, okay, I don't understand this yet. If I put this in, I'm doing a Macbeth on my readers. So that was very helpful. Also, I had the most amazing editor. I finished the book and a draft, and then my very beloved sister passed away very suddenly, just about 2.5 years ago, and I couldn't go back to the book. And there's a difference between grief and despair, I will tell you that. The grief is a very alive thing. But she really helped me, like you were talking about your editor. It's a wonderful, for the writer, interlocutive process, healing process, because no one pays attention to you like your editor, not your mum, not your lover, not your therapist, nobody except your editor. And that, her name is Nicole Duncan. She just was amazing. She just phoned me and she went week by week until I could walk by myself like a toddler, and then I was okay. But to me, that's important, where a memoir is for other people. You've poured things out and made sense of it, and then in a way I felt I'm writing something that's it struck me after the book came out, is how many people, especially men, wrote to me about this book saying we found ourselves in there, we understood something that women go through. That was amazing to me. And then I thought, okay, my house is working. The hospitality is working. If men can talk to me about living with women who've experienced violence, for instance, or breakdowns of various things. I thought I've aced it if South African men can write. I didn't even know they could. Although I have to tell you about one. He wrote to me and he said, so most of them write, another one wrote a long spiel, was really nice. And then he said, dear Margie, I found some grammatical errors. Would you like me to tell you which they are? So I just wrote back and said, no, thank you.
Even hotels will kick out unruly guests. Get out of my house.
Not that much room service. Yeah.
Lesedi, with you in the book, you start contemplating writing a book or not writing a book.
Yeah, like straight up live.
Yes, from there already, you're like, okay, am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? Is this going to happen? Is it not? So I think I'd like to hear a little bit about your process. I also just wanted to share that yesterday I got a message from somebody who said, still working through patient 12A, but so far so tender, raw and relatable, can't stop crying.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Please tell them I said hi.
I will.
So I mean, two things that both of you guys mentioned that I felt was so important, solitude and just kind of the word mad. And just kind of how that both played a role, I think, in my process of writing and I guess in my current mental health journey. If that's the question, right? So I really started writing. So I mean, after going back and forth for so long, even at the clinic, I think I really started writing after my mom passed away in 2018. I think, after a funeral or, just after a moment like that, there's like at some point the silence kind of washes over, and I think that's, that's sort of the solitude. And for me, like, I really started writing then because I had to kind of be like, what the hell was that? Like, I feel like after my mom passed away, like I had this moment where I kind of had to make sense of everything that had happened. Like a friend of mine recently like texted me and said, no one, like, living shouldn't. So she was just like, so at that point she was on day 18, I think, and she was saying to me, like, living shouldn't have been that hard for you or for anyone ever. And I think that was the feeling for me, where I was like, geez, Mom, like, she's gone, and I had to start making sense of things, and that's, I think, you look for those moments of silence where you can kind of start searching for those moments, for those answers. And something that's interesting for me is how we use the word mad, in the typical sense, but also to mean anger, to mean rage, and I was angry. I was really, really raging about the life that we had lived, and kind of how I'd lost my mom. And so, yeah, it sort of became just this moment of kind of sitting with my anger and my rage. And, I think that's what depression is, at least for me, what it has been for me as a lived experience, is just the suppression. The suppression of yourself, the suppression of difficult feelings, difficult memories that, you're not quite safe to experience as they're happening. I mean, in my case, I was a child, and we were kind of, just kind of moving all over the country, even made a stop here in Cape Town. So for a long time, I couldn't feel, so many feelings, so many emotions, so many thoughts safely. And so in 2018, I kind of had the moment where I could. I'm an adult, and I kind of had this moment where I was like, okay, I think, it's important to kind of work through the madness being rage, madness being pain, madness being all of these things that I've suppressed, and being able to give each one its moment in the light, each suppressed emotion, its respect, the respect it deserves. And, for me also writing was, there's this weird thing, I guess also that happens, I think, when you've kind of had, sort of traumatic experience where you almost don't want to let it go because it feels like a waste, right? And it feels like letting it go isn't respecting it enough because it affected so much. So I guess writing also for me was about transmuting that, taking all of that pain and making it into something else, and it was about respecting it enough to be able to do so, and also giving so much more meaning to my mother's life, which is complicated and very difficult to understand. But this felt like the right way, the right medium to understand my mom's life and to understand our lives. And so that's been crucial, I think, to my own sort of healing and growth, in the sense that, I've kind of shown a lot of respect to the rage, the pain, the anger, the madness. And in so doing, it's showed me a lot of respect too.
Dope, thank you. I think I just want to touch a little bit on something that all three of you have kind of mentioned now about this idea of madness and how people see it. And I know that for me, I often think about it as, what Hollywood kind of has given us, where, a mad or crazy person hears lots of voices and they speak to themselves, etc., etc.
Oh, look.
Yes, all of us.
All hearing voices.
Yes. But with that in mind, I think what I appreciated so much about all of your writing was that it felt to me that all three of you acknowledged a splitting of selves and were willing to kind of take that on in order to then express, which then meant that in all of your books, I found many different forms, which I found so incredibly exciting. So, for example, Siphokazi, with you, I think that even reading the back, and how you described as a weaver of seemingly discordant worlds, growing up in an Afrikaans dorpie, attending an English boarding school and going on annual holidays to a village, eMaxhoseni, during the transition years of South Africa's democracy. and how you confront the linguistic and cultural alienation experienced as a black learner in former Model C schools. So for me, when I picked up the book, I could read that. I was like, okay, here's this one about the house plant, but here's this beginning that's rooted very much in Intsomi, for example. But it's hilarious here, it's not here. We can see Model C here, not so much there. Then, Lee, I don't mean to do this to you, but could you pass me your book?
Yeah.
I would love to read a passage. I'm just not sure if I've marked it. Otherwise, I would get you to do it. Okay, so 229. Not me getting the author of the book to give me the book to read it. Yeah. The things sometimes one needs to make happen.
Open book?
Okay. So this is when you're asked, I'm interested to know, Lesedi, have you shared the intimate details of your life and your childhood with other people before? What did you say? Then your response. Never, not really. I've always hidden the facts of my life from others. By 2013, I had mastered the art of acting normal, or so I thought. Ma taught us to never let our pain show. It started in 2007 when I learned to leave out the parts of our life that I found embarrassing in conversations with friends. This is how I created an outer life that opposed my inner life. This is when those two parts of me splintered into entirely separate concepts. By 2008, I had mastered the art of sharing only the parts of my life that were respectable enough not to invite mocking from others. By 2010, I was obfuscating, okay words, the answers to innocent questions like where I went to school. When you confuse people enough, they don't bother to ask follow-up questions. Yeah, we all felt red in that passage, right? How many of us have practiced doing exactly that? Okay, so my question to the three of you is, how do you pick which elements of what to write and what doesn't make it to the book? So, yeah. What didn't make it to the books? What did you pick? What did you leave out? What did you say no thank you to you?
Wow. I feel like my editor should be here to answer that, actually. Like she was just like, we spent so long, I guess, trying to figure that out, like working that out. I think a big part of it is just that, what do you leave out, what do you keep? I mean, it's 400 pages long already. So there was a lot that I think we struggled to leave out, just because I think it's something like this just needs a lot of patience. For me, writing mental health sometimes feels like having to tell people about Santa and Christmas, right? It's like, like you're showing up and you're telling them Santa's not real, and they're like, I really didn't need to hear this shit right now. And it's disturbing my peace, So I think a lot of it is about landing it, or trying to land it quite gently, because what you're doing is, essentially kind of, complicating ways of being that people have held close for so long. And a lot of the time we do that because we're just trying to survive. A lot of people don't have time for compassion and self-inquiry, the kind that I had the opportunity to do in the story, and at the clinic itself, and in writing the book, because they are just trying to live on a day-to-day level, and just one thing is enough to just like bring this whole thing down. You know what I mean? And so for me, and my editor, those were the things that we wanted to keep in the book, the things that would just gently carry people through those moments of disturbance. And like you said, a lot of people would read that passage and kind of go, oh shit, that's me. And so we knew that those moments might come, and it was important, I think, for us that when those moments do come, that we try, I guess, just do it as gently as possible. Because, I mean, having lived with so much trauma in my own life, and knowing that this book is for people who might be in a similar position, it was never my intention to just kind of double down on the trauma, So I think a lot of this time, there are maybe many more traumatic scenes that we left out, because the intention of the book is not to kind of I guess just double down on that. I think many South Africans are aware of just how much trauma we live through on a daily basis. And so recreating that didn't feel useful to us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Siphokazi, could I ask you to speak a little bit on the form also that you've chosen?
Yes. What about it?
Everything.
Right,
Because
so-
as I said, so for me, sorry, I'll repeat once again. So as I said, the way that you described at the back of your book, I find it so fascinating because it's from so many different places, you know. So with that in mind, I found it so interesting that in the book, as I said, you start with Ntsomi, then you have poems, but they're all so incredibly exciting because they all take different forms, even the poetry, you know. I was saying earlier to Siphokazi, I love that there's one poem where it reads almost like a director's cut of like a script, and it's hilarious. There's the Mecca to the Eastern Cape also, which is so wonderful. So I just want to know about all of these voices, how you picked.
Right. I feel like
Because I've
editors-
never read one like this before. A book of poems with a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think editors have been getting a shout out here constantly, and I just really want to emphasize on that because sometimes I think people look because our names are on the covers, they're like, oh, this brilliant writer. Man, your brain. Like, there are 5 people.
No.
It is so collaborative. So yes, the moment of like, we generally give them a mess.
Yeah.
And they have to sort of make sense of that because they're thinking about you. Otherwise, we'd be the only ones buying the book. So editors, we love you. So shout out to our editors. I think what happened with this book was I took the opportunity and I was encouraged to take the opportunity to bring all of myself into it. And so I was thinking about the different influences that I have in terms of storytelling, and Ntsomi being a very significant part of it, which is a traditional Xhosa tale. It's a Xhosa tale, and which also allows for a kind of world building, because I wanted to draw the reader, even though it's a poetry collection, to draw the reader into this world that I've created between Kwatigeka Loku Ngantsomi and Phela Phela Ngantsomi. But also that kind of keeps shifting you between different geographies. I think this is something we chat about a little bit. Different geographies, different locations. And because I am a theater maker, I'm a filmmaker, I already have all of these others, what she calls a mixed masala, is to bring those splits and all of those influences into the space and really playing with form. Because writing a poem, like one would a screenplay, there's one that is written like a Bible chapter or a hymnal as well. So all of these, for me, it was like nothing was sacred in terms of form. And it's probably what I've gained through the in-betweenness. So I speak about alienation, but also it's about the language of navigating in-betweenness and creating something new. So it's not just the fact that, akunzima sana, it's so difficult. But it's also like, what is the language that I've created for myself in navigating between religion and tradition, between Xhosa and English. There's those kind of linguistic aspects as well, where there are parts of it that are written. It's primarily in English, but there's so much of Xhosa. And there's a glossary, but then there are parts of Ntsomi that aren't translated. If that scares you, don't be scared. Get the book. Because of that, it was sort of... there's a way in which I want the reader to experience this book that I think will help them understand how I move through the world. So being able to shift from a story, this tale, being able to shift between languages, being able to shift between forms. If you have certain contextual of the things that you share with me in terms of sort of demographics, like if you're a Model C who grew up in the Eastern Cape, there are things you're just going to get. If you speak English, there are things you get. But if you don't have certain things, there are things you won't get. But I think there's such a rich experience in being able to feel the dissonance of like, okay, but what is this world that has like a vulture, that has, all these human characteristics? Why is Shakespeare here? Because there's a part that's called Prospero's Island, but I'm using Shakespeare within Ntsomi. And then, thinking about, okay, there's something that's happening, like the Vicks calamine lotion, zonke zilapha, all of these things. And it's just this constant, but there are questions, and there's the making of samosas, and amasi now, alapa. So this is very eclectic in that sense. So even if you, and I think we had this conversation with Frankie where she was like, she was like, yeah, I was sitting, after I read the book, I was just like staring into the sky. I was just like, what? And there's 3 different ways to read the book. You can read it as it's laid out, which allows you to follow the trajectory of the story with these poetic episodes in between, which is following the form of Intsomi itself and sort of modernizing it for myself, because it's not a linear narrative in that sense. But you can also read just the poems, and you can just read just the story. So there's 3 ways to read the book. And its final invitation is actually returning. And that's one of the sections is returning. So with the hope that you'll read it and then want to go back, because now you want to make connections between these unexpected places that you cannot do with one reading. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Next question is for Margie.
Okay.
Getting
What a
ready.
special naughty corner question.
Yes. Margie, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about writing violence and how one goes about doing that. We know that you are a prolific crime writer, and you have so much knowledge, obviously, by way of journalism, research, etc., etc. And in the book, you speak a little bit about your research process, actually, and your writing process for your other books. And I absolutely love that you've come up with the character of, is it Claire? Claire Hart?
Claire Hart, yeah.
Yes, Claire Hart, who avenges dead girls. Love it. And my question, though, is, so usually you're doing this about, what did it feel like for you to have to reflect and write about violence that you've witnessed and that you've experienced yourself?
Well, it took me writing 5 Claire Hart novels. Those of you who've read them, you know that all of them deal with questions of shame, gender-based violence to women and to children. It took me 5 books to realize I was writing about myself. And that's stupid. Or that's split. So in the memoirs, looking at and I got more and more psychologically distressed. I mean, I did a lot. I was patron, some of you will know, patron of Rape Crisis for many years. I worked in prisons. I was obsessively writing about the body and obsessed with the idea of vulnerability and shame and our failure as a nation, all of us, doesn't matter what color or class, where you come from, to metabolize emotion and to deal with vulnerability, and to metabolize, by that I mean process and make nurturing the experiences that we have. So part of this breakdown that I describe at the beginning of Love and Fury was a kind of collapse, because I have experienced, like many of us have, sexual violence as a child, as an adolescent, and as an older woman. It never stops. I thought there was an age limit. It doesn't stop. Through that, the great gift that I never asked for, that none of us asked for, is an understanding of how shame works. And people have said to me, "You're so courageous writing the stuff that you write about in the novel." I wasn't actually courageous. It didn't feel courage. Courage is to do something that scares you. The only steps towards healing those of us who go mad from trauma or fragmentation as a child, and perhaps this is where writing is so important. I think of a traumatic event, and I saw this with the women I've interviewed and the children I've interviewed and worked with over the years, is a person gets frozen in time. So if you think of a rape victim, she becomes a thing, an object. A woman treated as an object. What does it mean to be a thing? Helpfully, I come from a country which was a slave society for 200 years. We have in our legislation the thingness of some people. We've had that. So I thought through those things very much, and I thought to be alive and healthy, listening to Lesedi talking, to you talking, part of being not mad is to be a verb, to be in motion, to be interactive, to be moving, to be the subject of your own experience, not to subject others. So in some ways, the writing about trauma and the linking that, of course, I wrote all these girls and women, I know them. I've been there in a place where someone has looked at me and I've seen through their eyes myself as a thing, because I was just a thing to be trashed like an old Kentucky Fried Chicken packet. You know what I mean? There's like, it's unbearable in the psyche to see yourself through those eyes. Part of the writing, the healing, the talking is returning to sender that gaze, to think what they did was shameful, not me. I'm in the VHS machine playing their shame video. It's really boring video. Send it back. Send it back. So then you think, okay, it's not courage. It's just I am able to say, I have been very vulnerable, and I've survived, and good for me, and good for you, and good. Do you know what I mean? And that's what's important. And why it's so important, these kind of books, and talking about this in South Africa, we have a highly macho society in which the greatest terror is that you would show a feeling. You will be destroyed. It's an ego investment, which is all on the surface. It shatters. It's very hard. It's very dangerous. It's like glass. It spikes everybody. You just do it the other way, and then I think that's important about the kind of books we've written. Other people who maybe don't have that particular form of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is writing, can peacefully read and think, okay, I see this in here. It helps with the journey. Certainly the books I read, the memoirs and things that I read were extremely helpful with that. So I think that but you can only write about those sorts of traumas once you've understood it. And for me, it took 700,000 words. 6 novels I wrote about that before I could come to this book. So I'm a bit slower than most, but it was, that's where the writing has saved me, and I think my writing has made a space for many people. And sure. I appreciate that for me, but also for them, because I've found spaces in other people's writing. It's really, Siphokazi is the performer, but it really is a conversation. It doesn't matter if it's written or spoken.
Thank you, Margie. Gosh, I see, as always with these amazing panels, time just starts to run out. And now I'm furiously looking at my list of questions, and I'm like, which one? I think what I'll do is I'll give us 5 minutes to ask questions, and I'll just ask one more question maybe, or maybe make an observation. And I just wanted to say the way that all of you write about your families is so special. It's so honest. It's painful, but I feel like you really do such an incredible job of honoring them anyway, so thank you for that. Lesedi, I really loved the way that you wrote about your mum. I think you write about her, but you give her such agency. One of the things that really excited me is I was like, yeah, this is a black South African woman. This makes sense. Michael Jackson concerts, Princess Diana mourning her. Brenda Fassie, all of it was super exciting. So thank you. My question my final question, let's say, for the three of you is, how do you handle potential triggers when you have to reflect on difficult moments in your life, especially those around childhood trauma? All of my questions are just sucking up all the air here. Everyone's like...
Sometimes, like I wrote to you, but you asked me that in an email, and I said, sometimes it just makes you cry. Mm-hmm. But an emotional trigger is not a gun. Mm. And I thought, in this particular case, if something came up, I'm with people who share, and you won't mind if I cry, or one of our. So I think part of it is that perhaps it's that word, it's good to feel those feelings. It's good to have that aliveness. And I had a wonderful therapist in Cape Town who, I didn't cry for 10 years, and she said to me, Margie, I started to cry. So when I was doing all the rape and violence work, she said to me, tears are lubrication. It's water. It brings new life. A tear, water drop, can erode the biggest rock or glacier, and it's the thing that makes us move. And I always wonder, why do macho men worry so much about crying? Because they would start to move. So tears are fine. It messes your mascara, but
they're good.
Emotion is, if people cry, they cry. Just hug them.
I might cry right now. Like, we still have 4 minutes to go. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we've got 3 minutes. Can squeeze something into there. Sorry.
I think for me, it's the making the work of remembering collaborative and not an individual process. So I'm going to read a poem quickly called Inosculation, which is when two trees grow close enough and they rub together. In that point, they actually merge. I wanted to write about my people making peace when love chafes into a lesion, burning impepo to smudge a space open, a circle of neighbors sipping umqomboti from the same gourd, spilling animal blood to restore ties between the departed and those who remain. But the ritual of gathering which our parents chose is in the grape juice blood of Jesus, imbibed out of a shot glass. To perform a version of Africanness on the page, persuade your eye away from this calamity. Children who are defanged to accommodate a colonial tongue are reduced to a mouthful of dentures, reciting clan names to camouflage the disruption, in conversations with extended family who smirk at the prosthesis of English. Now, if I'm to yield something authentic, a proverb, an idiom, a description of tradition, I scavenge the dropped fruit fermenting at the base of Google's omniscience. In the days after Utamkulu left us, I watched Otatomncinci unfasten the skin of a sheep with a knife from jaw to tail, in the same backyard where we shot marbles, leaving enough room behind the violence of the blade for Utanci to plunge a fist against the fat and flesh and separate the fur. I am an incomplete slaughter, alive and naked. All my cultures reconcile me to myself through bleeding figures. I compose imibongo with split tongue, umtendelego omcha, foraging through family history with mother and father, for things I can translate into poems. We dispel the shame of loss when we are a forest of trees exposed and grafting at the point of abrasion, willing to turn our vulnerability towards each other.
Sure. Yes. See you again. A poet. Okay, I think it's definitely time that I open it up to the floor for any questions. Okay, love this. Are there
Or
any
answers.
microphones? Yes, or answers. Yes, let's start there, and then if you could come down here.
Thank you. My question is for all three authors, or anyone who wants to answer. So after you've written something like this, I think Lee mentioned the fear of letting go of the trauma. How do you there's been trauma, there's been an event, there's mental health, and you've written about it. Do you feel that now the urge is to move on, or how do you... I'm thinking, where does this book lie with you, or how does this lie with you after you've completed it, sent it out in the world? Is it still a companion in your life? Do you want to distance yourself from it? Do you forever take it with you? What's your relationship with the work now?
Well, it's been 3 weeks since the book launch. So I'm not quite... but yeah, I've you know, wow. First thing I did when the book came out, I put it into my family members' hands. And, you know, I had discussed it with them even before. But yeah, that was just like first thing. And that was probably, I think, in the last month, the one, I guess, point where it felt like I could both get away from it, and I knew I also would never be able to, you know. My questions from family are going to keep coming. You know, discussions with family are going to keep happening. And as much as, you know, maybe I do want to kind of move past it, yeah, just seeing it on my dad's bookshelf reminds me that it's never going away. But I think after writing it, not necessarily once it was out, but just kind of after letting go, surrendering the draft with Zotwa, my publishing editor. Yeah, once, you know, Zots and them kind of got me to surrender. Hey, Zots. Got me to sort of surrender the manuscript. I think maybe that week, what it felt like was that I had done something my therapist actually at the clinic has said I should do, which is not to waste my past. So yeah, just kind of felt like I hadn't wasted my past, but I'll let you know at next year's edition. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've learned with the writing, you asked about moving on, is that you can't leave your past behind as if it's lost luggage.
Good.
People keep on following you, or the luggage itself gets its own wheels and follows you. So part of it is a way of working out how you live with yourself. If you're me, that's a problem. But I think part of that is that it absolutely, I don't know if it ruins all conversations with new people, because then you're telling them something and they say, yes, I know, you went here in 1987. I'm thinking, how? And they say, but Margie, you wrote it down in the book.
It's no talking stages anymore.
No,
just like,
no.
go to page 93 to see my favorite color.
Exactly. But it is quite a strange, I found it more weird than doing novels. But also more meaningful, because there is something I want to say about when you write fiction, you have to create a world which is absolutely plausible and true in and of itself. In writing about yourself and one's families, and the people who've had the misfortune of coming in the proximity of a writer, because it's really not their fault, is that you have a very strict criteria of truthfulness. Well, I certainly did, of finding a way of getting to the truth of your experience and how you might have affected other people and what happened. So my way was just telling how it affected me. And the interesting thing that has given me is a compassion for others and a compassion for myself, which is, I think, what the mad lose, what was certainly what I lost. That's the origin of the self-destructive feeling. And because you have to be above it, the story, to see it, you get a compassion for yourself. And that, to me, is the greatest gift. I was married for bazillions of years, it felt like, the first time. But when you get unhappy, all you know is the unhappiness. Because I had to tell the truth, that I married a man I loved and I made 3 children out of love for that man. What was returned to me was the love and happiness that we did have for the first 15 or more years of our relationship. And that was a tremendous gift, and it was because I had to be true. I wasn't unhappy all the time. I got miserable, very, but they were 2 experiences. So it gives back the complexity of life, which I think is the way to be sane. To be mentally healthy is to be able to live with ambivalence and complexity.
I have nothing to add.
I had nothing to add either. It was like, okay.
That was beautiful.
One more question. Got it. Sorry, everybody.
Hi, this is a question for Lesedi.
Hey.
I was absolutely blown away by your book.
Thank you.
Just floored by it.
Thank you so much.
It's the first book. The writing is beautiful. I could go on,
Thank
but
you.
I won't. I just wonder if I could very quickly read something and then ask you about it.
Sure.
So this is from Lesedi's book. We are all actors portraying an acceptable character, and we negotiate with its demands. Look around you. People everywhere are slurping on alcohol and imagining new drugs just to cope with the charade that we're not who we say we are. The world is on fire, and you're only rewarded for surviving the fire, not extinguishing the flames. That's everyone. Everyone. That just blew me away. So that made me cry, and then it made Belinda cry in the shop as well. You know, that kind of is such a universal thing. And what I wondered was, obviously this book is so incredibly personal to you, and was a journey for you. As you wrote, were there moments when you thought of the readers and how the book might help them, or was it just, you know, the Lesedi journey and we come along with it if you
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. I think, you know, thinking about the reader, or thinking about the reader as who I was, I think when I walked into the clinic, was why I think I chose to write it in such a personal way. And also because, you know, the passage that you read for me was about so many things, but also how, we can't ignore our material conditions when we think about our mental health, and I think that's something we often do. One of the reasons why I didn't want to kind of go into that sort of self-help territory is because a lot of the time self-help sort of places the onus on the individual. It's like, why aren't you, here's 12 steps for you to do better, be productive, get to work on time, do your bed. I don't know, like, was that Jordan Peterson, I think. But, so for me it was like, it had to be told, I think, as a human story, because MI, I think, is a cancer of connection from yourself and to others and to the world around you. And we participate, I guess, in the world in just kind of this weird way where we pretend we're not aware of our own discomfort all the time, but yeah, not many people are having fun, and it seems weird to me that we pretend we are. And so, yeah, just the material conditions of the world, systemically, etc., have a large role to play, I think, in our experiences of MI and disconnection from self. And so writing it as a human story was a crucial part of reconnecting with self, So instead of 12 steps to get better, I wanted to write about the 12 missteps you're likely to encounter, because that's human. That's part of it. And so, at no point do I suggest I'm a mental health expert whatsoever. I've never wanted to suggest that, but rather I'm just going to tell you a story about the lived experience of it. And I can't do that. I can't tell you about sort of my experience of mental health without talking about the material conditions that contribute to it. And that's why I wrote that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, everybody, so we've reached the end of our discussion, but I'm not done with you yet. So may I ask you a favor? Can everyone please take out their cell phones? Yes, I'm not joking. Amazing. Can you give this to Lesedi? Can I ask all of the authors, can you please hold your books and hold them out like this?
Sitting down, or should we stand?
Actually, you can stand up even, or however. No, sit. We like the drama. Sit. Yes. Everyone take a photo. I'm in the business of selling these books. They are available at the book lounge.
Must we go close?
Can we see your faces?
Okay.
Oh, cute. Love this. Turn this way also now. This side, everybody.
Oh my God, I'm feeling so Venice.
Amazing.
Biennale, or whatever it is. Yeah.
And last round of applause. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Buhle. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Buhle.
Yeah,
It was wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.